Let's go. All right, Josh, man, how are you? Thanks for doing this. Thanks. So welcome to the show.
You know, anytime I can talk with another tall gentleman, I'm not going to miss the opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. You told me a little bit about, your dad was in the industry a little bit, but how did you first get started? Like, what was your first incline into film?
Yeah, you know, my dad was a big cinemaphile growing up, so he was playing all the John Ford westerns, and we were watching Seven Samurai and stuff growing up. So I got exposed to a lot of higher art films as a kid. And my dad was writing screenplays, spec screenplays in his free time. And so I can remember being 10 years old and reading scripts, and imagining what they would be like as a movie, and waiting for them to get sold, so that we could all go on vacation and stuff. So I had this awareness of film, and my dad was always talking about film. And when DVDs started having special features, we'd watch the behind the scenes. So I had this appreciation for film growing up, but it never occurred to me that was an option to be like a career, because it was so hard for my dad to get anywhere. I mean, he finally got an
And you saw him, you watched him this whole time writing scripts,
but struggling to ever really get anywhere with them,
like any traction.
Yeah,
actually.
so it wasn't something I wanted to pursue, because we struggled. And I know that it was always kind of a bitter pill for him, of just having rejections and no's, and then we're talking to someone, they're interested in buying it, and then no. And so I pursued computer science to do something that was actually paid the bills, and
Went to college to be a computer engineer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Look at you, man.
Yeah, got a bachelor's in computer science, and started doing IT stuff.
I remember exactly what you were talking about the first time that I saw the DVDs with behind the scenes. In fact, I probably looked more forward to watching how the movie was made than the movie itself. I mean, I loved movies, and my father was a big influence on my life as well. Like, he would come home, and when internet first got to the level where you could download movies, he would just bring home a movie, figure out somebody had downloaded it,
Yeah.
and then we would watch it, and I would, it started with Blockbuster. He'd come on a way home from work. He would bring a VHS home with a movie that just came out, and be like, yes. And but those didn't have the so I first have developed a love for film, and then when the behind the scenes, I was just like, well, how did they do that? What's that thing, like that crane thing that goes what's that? Why do they do that? And what is the director looking? Why is the director looking into the lens, and what is he doing? So that was, you mentioned Seven Samurai. Did you see the, my father's favorite film is Magnificent Seven?
Yes.
Yul Brynner, Charles Bronson, Steve McQueen.
Actually, the film if fast forward to most recently, I co-wrote a feature film with my dad, and it was, I don't want to say based on it. It certainly wasn't based on it, but it has a similar vibe to Magnificent Seven, but set in the future. It's like a post-apocalyptic thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
Already, I don't know much about it, but
it's called Refuge.
So you got introduced to film kind of through a parent, but you developed your own kind of a process and love for it. But then you went to college to be a computer engineer?
Computer engineer, yeah.
So when did it came back? Like, well, I really want to look at this as a serious opportunity or possibility.
Yeah. So the short version of the story is, while I was in college, I started developing health issues, really bad, and I had to give up soccer, I had to give up music, I had to give up weightlifting, because I just was in a lot of pain, and it was even hard for me to type on my keyboard, because I was working a full-time job in IT and going to school at night, and so I was really pushing myself, and it was really hard. I was getting burnt out, and I needed something to do because I was losing all my hobbies, and I had a passion for film. Independent film was just kind of starting to really get some steam and get some attention, and I started finding out there's people making movies. I was living in the DC area. It was people are making movies in the DC area just for fun. I was like, that's cool. I know I could never go to Hollywood and be a professional, whatever, but I could do it for fun. That sounds interesting. So I just went to an audition for a short film, and I booked this little speaking role in it. That's how I got
As an
started.
actor?
As an actor.
So you were looking at the opportunity, like people are making films, but you've always known, like, okay, if I'm going to do something, it's going to be acting.
Yeah. And it was a personal thing. Like I growing up, I never thought about being an actor. It was never an ambition of mine. I would imagine making movies. I even thought about becoming like an animator to like make animated films. I wanted to make Lord of the Rings. And so I was like, I got to do CGI,
You got to do CGI.
So I thought about that. But when it came time to like get involved with movies, I wanted to do acting because I think there was a lot of things going on personally with just like my self-development as a person, where I was like, I need to experience life and I need to grow as a human being, because I just felt very like stunted, and acting was a way to like both an escape and also like a way to explore like what it is to be human.
Did you somehow, as a kid, did you like, I always ask this, is like, did you make up stories, or did you create fantasy characters, or did you ever try to, or not at all?
I used to imagine movies. Like, I read a lot of books. I was reading novels. I was reading Lord of the Rings as a little kid.
I don't know a lot of 10-year-olds that read scripts, but your father was writing scripts. And because I guess I was going to ask you, so you must have been reading a lot of books. So then reading a script was not that hard for you. I mean, imagine giving a 10-year-old a script, like just by himself, like, oh, this is cool. But I guess your imagination was driving like what the movie would look like. And
yeah, I mean, when I was like, 12, 13, I was reading like college level, like literature. So yeah, I was big into reading and big into literature. And I would imagine things. I would play out the movie in my mind. That was like, I would do that for fun, just kind of daydream, like, oh, this is where the story would go. And then he would say this.
And were you one of the characters? Like, would you imagine the story and then you'd be like, oh, I'm John. I'm definitely this guy who's going to get the girl. And you imagine.
I don't know, like with the like designing movies, I would think about it in the first person, but certainly when I would read books, like say Lord of the Rings, I would imagine like, well, what would it be like to be this character? If I'm Aragorn, like what's that experience like?
So you're from Virginia?
I'm from New York originally, but I lived in the DC area for most of my life.
And then how did you find out about this community that were making indie movies? Who introduced that to you? Do you remember what the exposure was?
I think I just started hearing, like, my dad would mention things, and I just started hearing about stuff, and I just started researching. I just went on the internet while I was in college, and I just started Googling about acting, filmmaking, Virginia, DC, and just started finding there was like a community board, there was message boards, there was a mailing list, there's just different things that people are doing to create community.
And then all of a sudden there was an audition, and you're like,
I'm like, okay, I want to try out. I get to try for a movie. This will be exciting and scary.
Yeah, nice.
Let's do it. And I ended up, a couple weeks later, I'm on a film set, like shooting a short film.
Talk about that a little bit. What was your first? Do you remember that first time? Like, I remember my first time when I walked on, like, growing up in Czech Republic, the Hollywood is like, for you, like, you can take a train or a bus, but for me, it was like a different language, a whole nother country, across the ocean,
another planet,
like completely. But watching the behind the scenes, and then as a teenager, I also worked on some sets as a day player during the summer as like a intern or like a summer job. But like when I first got on a union, like the major leagues NFL type level set, talk about that experience when you walked in on a set for the first time. This is your first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that like? Like the camera and, just the whole process. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, it certainly wasn't the major leagues like what you're talking about. It was a very, very modest, short film, low budget short film. So it didn't feel like there was like that infrastructure that you see on a studio project that's kind of intimidating. But it was definitely like all new because I hadn't had taken any classes. I hadn't gotten any instruction on like this is what it's about or what it is. So everything was new. I think the audition, the first audition for the film was the more intimidating thing because for me that was like the moment of like you either fail or pass or like you either get rejected or make a fool of yourself or you win.
Did you had an idea what auditions are about when you were going into the first one?
No. I mean, like I said, I'd never taken an acting class, never done acting before. I'm like, I think I did like a school play as a kid one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I had any lines. So it was really, really scary. I mean, I can remember sitting in the waiting room, like reading the script, and like my hands were like
Sweaty and shaky.
like frozen, and like I was like almost hyperventilating, and I couldn't like see clearly. Like I was getting like tunnel vision going in there, and I was like,
and you
breathing
booked
heavy.
it, and then you did book it. You got it.
I auditioned for the lead character. I didn't book that, but they were like, well, you got potential. We'll give you this like 2-line character. Like, we'll start you off slower. Try out.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
So for the next 6 months, I started doing other like short films and industrials and stuff like that.
More auditions.
And I got a kind of found/created a group of actors, and I got this guy who used to be an actor in LA to like be the coach or the teacher. And he started like workshopping stuff of like, okay, here's a camera and this is a close-up and here's a medium. And it was kind of an on-camera workshop. And he was super awesome. He just wanted to pour into people, and he also wanted to create projects because he was interested in producing. So it was kind of like this film acting working group.
Yeah, he created a little network.
Yeah, and I kind of organized some people together and invited him to be a part, to help lead it. And he taught us for, the like over a year. We continued just meeting once a week and just run through exercises, and he would do acting, he'd do on camera stuff.
So basically, there was the first time you kind of start studying the craft of what it is like to be on a film set. The things to do, the things, what it means when somebody says, "Hey, Josh, we're gonna rehearse this, or we're gonna block. We're blocking." You're like, "What? What's that?"
Yeah.
Right. For the first time, if you're on the set, like a guy comes to your first AD and says, "Hey, we're gonna block the scene," and be like, "Okay, cool. What's that?"
Yeah, and it still wasn't getting into like the artistic side of like, well, what does it mean to be an actor, and what is the craft of acting really about for me? But it was more like the practical stuff.
Yeah, just the technical, how the set even runs.
How do you hit your mark, and
crossing the line, or
stay in frame.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Don't break the fourth wall, and
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So then basically I did that for about 6 months, and then I was offered the lead in this no budget feature film. And I was like, oh my gosh. And
a lead?
Like, a lead, yeah.
So there were some auditions. There must have been some rejection.
Oh yeah.
And from what happened to you in the first audition, how did you kind of dealt with the mindset going into the next audition?
I mean, you get a little bit more used to it, but honestly, for years after that, I was like thrashing around in the water for years. So it was like sheer force of will. I was like pushing through all of the nerves and stuff. But
how do you find that? Like share that. I genuinely always was curious about when you get so many no's, how do you just still keep driving for the final to get that yes?
For me, when I decide I want to do something, I just like when I get like passionate about something, or like this is an interesting challenge, I want to pursue this. It's kind of like I can't quit until I feel like I've reached that goal or got broken through. So for me, when I started acting, it was like, this is really hard and scary and challenging, but also fascinating. And it's like, I won't feel good about myself until I crack it, So for like literally about 4 years, I was just on this trail of like, I'm gonna crack this. Like I'm gonna overcome this, because it feels really like I'm sort of getting beaten by it. I don't like this fact that I get intimidated. I don't like the fact that I like fear kind of overtakes me. And like, I want to be able to go in there and be alive and be myself and own my space and be able to do this acting thing, figure out whatever that is. And so I was just went on this learning trail of just
how old are you when you were when you did that first you were finishing college?
I was finishing college.
Okay. And then was there support from your father, who kind of was writing scripts and wanted to be in the films? Were they like, yeah, Josh, go for it? And was there support from the family to pursue acting?
Well, the first few years, I was just a hobby that I literally wasn't thinking I could ever do it professionally. I was just like, this would be a cool hobby and a passion. So for them, it was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, they weren't thinking I was doing it too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was like, as long as, you know, you have a good job, you know, whatever. So
you're going through some auditions, and then I don't know if you want to call this your break, you know, kind of your break-in point, but you booked a lead role.
Yeah.
In 6 months.
Yeah.
For a feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, they weren't paying me, so it wasn't like a lot of competition, but I mean, they had a DVD distribution or whatever, so it wasn't like, I mean, they were spending some money on it.
Think about this though, how clever of you, not even looking at the fact that they're not paying you. Like, yes, I'm doing it, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. As think about the amount of money you would spend on an acting coach or a practice to go do a feature film. What would it cost you if you would want a feature film?
Or even a demo reel.
Right? Yes. And you're like, you're not paying me, but I will be the lead. Right. This I can use as a demo reel. This I can use as a stepping stone learning curve and everything. Yeah. So you were pretty stoked, I imagine, about that lead role.
Yeah. Well, and I just also felt a huge sense of accomplishment because, like I said, I've been spending 6 months like doing this camera workshop and going to auditions and getting lots of no's. You know, I think I did like a couple of little things, and then it was like, oh, you're going to be the lead in this feature, and it was like home run.
Yeah. So how big was a project? What was the budget roughly? Do you know? Was it 100K, 50K?
It's like probably 50K.
50K. Well, still, that's a small little indie feature.
It was their first feature too. Like, they had never made a movie either. So like they were like, we're doing our first feature and this is your first feature, and like
it's all take a chance together.
Learn together, yeah.
What was that? Was there any awards and festivals or anything with that?
You know, it was a very fledgling effort. It's not something that I was like, oh, look at this movie I'm in. It was like, I knew going into it, I'm like, okay, they've never made a movie before. I've never made a movie before. This could really suck, but it's going to be a learning experience. And that's what I took out of it. And I didn't come away with it going like, oh, everyone watched my movie. I was kind of like, it wasn't that great, but I was like, it was a good experience.
Good
experience.
Yeah. What was so now you've got the workshop,
and I'll tell you, it inspired me. That's what it did, because I didn't come away going like, I'm the man. It was like, dude, I have a lot to learn, but I want to learn it.
So it humbled you.
It was humbling. Yeah.
Like, this is hard.
Yeah.
I need to know my craft.
Respect for acting.
Yeah. There's another thing I get asked a lot from people that like are PAing, or you know, if they're on the set with me. You know, Tori and I just did a project, and we had a she started as she was intern, right? Yeah, she started as an intern, and I kind of, because it was an indie budget and we were short on crew, I basically promoted her through second or third AD, depending where you live in the world. You know,
assistant to the regional director.
Yeah. And she crushed it, but and you know, all the PAs and then sometimes they would come to me and says like, "Well, how did you get here? How did you get here? And how did you do this?" And I was like, "I've worked my ass off." You know, you need to know, you need to learn your craft. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to know it really well, because there's just no other way. You just have to do it, and you have to do it, and you have to do it, and you have to do it. You know, I think there's this weird sensation going on around the world with these overnight successes. I don't know anybody. All my friends or anybody that I know who's successful have put in the work.
Yeah.
And like crazy amount of work.
Yeah.
So like, show me somebody who's the other day I was listening to this documentary and they were talking about the GoPro, like how everybody thinks like GoPro all of a sudden was like this overnight success. GoPro was 10 years in a business before GoPro kind of got on the map as a GoPro for like, you know.
Well, and same, I've been doing it seriously for over a decade. And a lot of times people are like, you know, oh, like how did you get this role? I'm like, well, do you have 6 hours? I could tell you.
So now, humbling experience, but stepping forward into like, was this the time when you're like, oh, I can do this, but I want to do this, or was there also a realization with this that I can do this as a career?
No, What it was is I don't know anything about acting. I kind of I don't talk about myself now, but I was like, I suck at acting. That was actually, honestly, that was kind of like I hate my acting. I suck. But like I'm determined to crack this and to get better. And so really what it was like I need to learn what acting is in order to figure out how to do it. So I embarked on like a 1-year self-directed like immersion experience of watching interviews and going to different acting workshops and reading books and like studying movies and like immersing myself in every possible like source of information and training, and not to say like learning how to be an actor, but like learning what being an actor is so that I can learn it. So I was really coming from a place of like I don't even know what I don't know, so I need to find out what I don't know so that I can learn it.
So is this past college already? College is finished.
Yeah.
And so you keep talking about workshops. Maybe you can talk about a little bit, how can somebody find a workshop, what workshops are, and I'm assuming workshops kind of go hand in hand with like an acting coach, or there would be an acting coach in an acting workshop. What's your opinion about like workshops and acting coaches? Yes, no, when, why?
Yeah. So I mean, workshops generally kind of means like an intensive, like a short intensive,
Like a little program,
like
a course.
It's not a course. It's like a 1 day or weekend event or like a couple weeks. You know, it's like a dabbling. A class is more of like an ongoing. Being in class is like a more ongoing thing. Then there's acting school, which you're enrolled in a whole program. I knew I didn't want to go to acting school because I was working and I wasn't, I just finished college. I didn't want to go back to school. And I also didn't want to be told what I had to learn. Like I wanted to decide independently. So workshops is a great way to say, okay, here's a teacher, here's an approach. Let me spend a day or two being exposed to that. And then you go to a workshop with someone else and be like, okay, well, what do they say? And so I just went to different workshops of just anyone I could find that seemed good and started to figure out, okay, this doesn't really work for me. And then let me try this guy. And like, okay, that seems more like that. I get that. And so by going to different workshops, I eventually found a teacher that I related to, that I was like, okay, I think I need more from her. And,
was she acting coach or
an acting coaching, acting teacher. Yeah. That was the first one that I really latched onto was Carol Fox Prescott, and she was from New York, but she would come down to DC and teach workshops. And I and some of the other actors got together and we, created this.
She's still around with her.
She's still around. Yeah.
The program. What was it called again?
Her name's Carol Fox Prescott.
Carol Fox Prescott.
Yeah, she teaches over Zoom now. Like most acting teachers.
Yeah,
right now.
like most classes.
Like most classes now.
Yeah. We'll get into that a little bit later.
But she would come down from New York and like once a month, and we would do like a workshop, with her, and that was an ongoing thing. So that was really, really helpful. But I went to many different people to figure out where I was going.
In that year of doing workshops and acting classes and working on what actor is and learning like what it means to be an actor, so you can be better actor to then figure out like what to do to be a better actor. Was there still auditions you were going on? Was there still projects you were trying to?
Oh yeah. I mean, like for example, the feature that I was in, one of the actors in there was wanting to become a director, and he approached me, and he was, he really was a fan of my work, like working with me on set, and he was like, I've got this idea for this long form short film, and it's kind of a horror movie thing. And he was like, you'd be perfect for the lead in that. He's like, do you want to do it? I'll give you food and credit. And I was like, okay, great. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So it would like lead one thing to another. So, and I would go to classes, and then I would get these little projects, these little like amateur projects. And I would go on set, and I was like, okay, let me try this technique and let me see how this works. So it was great because I was learning, and then I was also getting to get on camera and try stuff out and then see, well, what does that look like?
Do you like to watch dailies and kind of watch your work, or do you watch the final product, or do you?
I love to see the final product. I used to watch dailies a lot, or not even dailies. I used to watch the playback on the monitor, like as often as I could.
Like, let me see.
Yeah, let me see. How did that look? And now I'm kind of like, if I don't know, sometimes I will, but now I'm kind of like, it's just going to distract me from like what I'm
And
focused
you
on.
might be adjusting somewhere where the director doesn't want to go.
Yeah, and also like it'll just get me distracted thinking about like, well, I don't know if I like how the DP's doing this or that, and then like, well, that's not my job, so I can't change that. So it's
Bug
gonna
you.
pull focus.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, but I love to watch the film. I love to watch the finished product, or even the rough cut or the editing bay, and see how it's coming together. Because that's a good feedback after I'm removed. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, how did that come across? And if it's great, if I am happy with it, then I get jazzed about it because I'm like, oh, that's really
Yeah.
cool how it came together. And I don't even see myself. I see the character,
Mhm.
and I see the imagination of the movie, and I'm like I dig that. And I got to be a part of that, and that's exciting to me.
Very, very exciting. You know, it's interesting. Some people, I was just talking to somebody about what movie starts at, like you get a first draft, right, or outline, then a first draft, second, third, fourth, fifth, then a locked script, then you have a shooting script, then you have what you actually filmed, then you have a rough cut, then you have the edit, and like by the time you get from you from the start to the finish, you have to understand it's like what was here and what's actually here at the end is like a whole, it's kind of there, but it could be very different from where you started to where the movie ends. How many different eyes and creatives it goes through before it becomes a film that you can watch in the cinema.
Yeah, well, even some of these big films, like they shoot the movie and they're like, I don't like the second half. Let's reshoot that with a new writer.
Yeah, and then let's do a rewrite.
Yeah,
Or maybe let's fire the director and get a new director.
exactly. Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah, it's a very cutthroat business, right? It's a very kind of like direct. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like with being an actor, I mean, I had three, not I had three television shows that I booked and was cut from before I even got to be on set in a row.
you booked it,
Yeah,
get cast
yeah.
or cast,
And then for various reasons, they're like, actually, we're going to use somebody else instead.
How do you deal with that? That's a different type of rejection. So you're basically already like, I got this, I got a project, and then like, yeah, I'm gonna go with somebody else.
Yeah, I can remember when I was kind of in those first couple few years starting out, I would drive. Being on the Mid Atlantic, you got to drive. Like sometimes I would drive to Atlanta, North Carolina, Richmond, New York, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. So it was like a lot. Like going when you spend hours driving to get to an audition, and then you have like 2 minutes to do your scene. It's like so much pressure. Do the trick. So much pressure, and not just pressure, but it's like build up of like investment of like I put my whole day into this, and if I don't get it, I just wasted a whole day. It can be the mindset back then.
Yep.
And so I can remember I auditioned for this student film, and I booked the lead in it, and it was going to be shot on like 30. It was going to be shot on 16 millimeter film, and I was like, oh, my first time to work on a real film. This is going to be exciting, and it was artistic, and I was like, this is really cool. And that was at the point where I'd been acting for a few years, and I was like starting to feel like, I think I've got something here that I feel more confident in myself. And, I really put a lot of emotion into this audition, and they were really impressed, and I got the role. And, I was like, okay, I got it. I'm excited to shoot this. This is going to be good because of X, Y, and Z. And then the director reached out, and they're like, so I realized that you're just too tall for this character, so I'm going to recast the part. And I was like, you can't do that to me. Like, we had an agreement, and it's like out of my control. It's like not like, oh, can you do better? It's like your identity as a human being just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, but it's it's hard because it's hard not to take that personally as like not you, but it's like the character, right? It's like differentiate between the character. You're just not the character. The director's like, I'm envisioning.
Yeah,
but it's not you personally. It has nothing to do with it. I'm looking for something specific.
Right, but it's also in those kind of cases, it's like you're never safe. It's like you can even get the part, and then it's like, actually, we're gonna pull the rug out from underneath you, or you got the part, but we're gonna cut you out of the movie.
Well, that's hard.
Or I just spent 3 months knocking myself out for this volunteer project, and like gave everything I had, like blood, sweat, and tears, and then the director's like, oh, I decided not to finish it. So you're never going to see it. So you're working for copy and credit, but you're not going to get copy and credit either.
Wow.
So those first 4 years, especially, it was really emotional sometimes.
I can't imagine. Yeah, that's a difficult thing to deal with. Especially when like you get a job, and then like it gets taken away when so you can't really have any expectation until like the picture's locked and you're watching the finished product, because they can still, there's so many hands again it can go through to, like in the edit room you could be cut out of the movie,
and not even because your performance was bad, just because they don't have time for that scene,
or it didn't work, or
and then even like, last year, for example, like, well, this is exceptional, but I had a feature film, Inheritance, that was going to be premiering at Tribeca. I was like, oh, my first, legit film festival premiere, and a theatrical release, and then like COVID and everything canceled.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That whole COVID thing is a whole nother story but COVID fucked things up for a lot of people, big time, especially for gig workers and stuff. And it took a really long time for people to figure out like how we're gonna, because everybody was like, okay, we need to figure out how we're gonna keep working. Mm-hmm. This is not like we're gonna shut down and just not make movies or TV. Like, people are gonna want to watch things, and so it took a really long time though for the industry to figure out like what the protocols are gonna be, and what the safety and testing and all that, how that's gonna work. And that time period really sucked. So what it did for me though, when we finally went to go to Vegas, shoot this movie that I just finished in October, November of last year, everybody, including the cast, the crew, the producers, was so grateful to be there. Mm-hmm. It's by far the best crew I've ever worked with. Mm-hmm. Just everybody has this sense of camaraderie and appreciation for being on set. Rates were low. Small budget independent film, but everybody was so stoked to be on set. People were like, just get me out of the house. I just want to go to set. Yeah, we're roll camera rolls, like people were like, what? We're actually filming something, we're making something happen. And it turned out it was a lot of fun. It was a great movie. But yeah, COVID really I think the main thing with COVID was how long it took for people to figure out how do we not cancel shows, not cancel, how do we figure out to work around the problem. Mm-hmm. So
it's interesting how loss creates gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
You only know you've been high when you're feeling low.
Yep. Yeah. Or you don't know what you had until you lost it. It's the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, I haven't heard any complaint. And we spent the first 3 days shooting in the desert, where I almost died, because we didn't have PAs in the first 3 days. Yeah. This is one of those. But we had a good crew, and we had kind of all the departments and everything, where we just kind of like, we didn't have PAs. I'm like, guys, we're in the middle of the desert. People don't know where to go. We had one costume girl she was amazing. And the first 3 days in the desert, we're shooting this stunt coordinating shootout, where we had some live rounds, blanks, but mm-hmm. And just this major cars, stunt, and all these people in tactical gear and this and that, and like, what's happening? Like, why? Like, I'm helping the actor put on the knee pads and the helmet, and like, you look like a SEAL guy. Yes, go. And then people are like, where's the first AD? I'm like, I'm in the wardrobe right now. And another actor saw me, and he's like, fuck it. And he was on Jalen. What was the show that Jalen did? SEAL Team 6.
Yeah, the 6.
Mike, can't hear you, buddy.
Yeah, SEAL Team 6.
SEAL Team 6, yeah. So he was on what was it, CB? I don't know, whatever. But so he had actually experience, right? So he was like, I'll help out. I know what, it's supposed to look like. And so I love that when set and the crew kind of becomes a family, the camaraderie, and everybody has the same uh, intention of making the best product that everybody pours their heart into it. And that's been a humbling experience for me on the, we shot during pandemic, and everybody was safe. We had one person who never made it to the set who tested positive, and we had to recast on the go real quick, but we dealt with it. Everybody stayed safe. And so you're kind of years into it now. You've done a bunch of things. And when is the breakthrough? When was the realization like, okay, I can do this as a career. I can do this as a job.
Yeah. There was a point about, I want to say 10 years ago, that I decided like it's time to kind of like decide what I'm doing with this, because it was like kind of an all-consuming hobby, and I was spending all my vacation time from work to go to like set and film stuff. And I was like, if I'm gonna do this any more seriously, like I need to do this.
Were you working throughout this time supporting yourself? Like you had an actual day job?
Yeah, I had a full-time day job. Yeah, so work, shoot on weekends or on vacation time, holidays, that kind of thing. It actually, I mean, when you're starting out, it works fine, because, you do auditions, and most of the time you're not working. So, you need to do something to pay the bills. But I decided to go to a showcase, like an acting showcase, a national acting showcase. I'm like, I've been doing this whole DC area thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I got to decide if I'm going to
What's a showcase? What's a national showcase?
So,
just for people listening that maybe don't know.
So there's various organizations that will host these things where they invite, you pay to do, like, it's like a monologue showcases when you get some agents together and you perform a monologue in front of them for representation. This is a little bit bigger. So they bring in directors and producers and agents and managers and whatnot from the industry to this convention center, and they have actors pay to attend and you get to perform on stage for all of these industry people and have a chance to get some representation or connections for people who are aspiring.
How big is the stage and the audience that's watching you?
This one I went to was I want to say there was like maybe 1,500 performers.
Mm-hmm.
There was at least 100 industry people, probably over 100 industry people there.
And they're all sitting in one room, looking at one stage, and you just go up there and...
Yeah. Sometimes you were on camera and then it would be projected on a screen, and sometimes you'd be on stage and there'd be like, 20 judges in a table in front of you, and then like 500 people in the audience.
Wow.
And you have like 30 seconds to like go up and perform.
That sounds even more terrifying than just an audition in a casting room.
Yeah.
Agency.
No, it was. And you have like a number, and they're like, number 457, go. You have 60 seconds.
Wow.
And so I remember like the big thing was like, if you get seven industry people to give you a call back, like they can pick your number and say, I want to talk to this person, then you get to go to the room, like the big room, and you just go like table to table and meeting people.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like, I think I got exactly seven callbacks. And I'm like, yes, I made the cut. So I got to go in the big room with all the industry people and go table to table and meet all the agents and stuff. And I remember I ran into, that's where I met Paul Weber. He used to be a casting director for MGM.
Uh-huh.
And I met an agent from Abrams Talent Agency and some other people from New York and LA. And I remember they were like, they weren't like, oh my gosh, you're the next big thing. They were kind of like, yeah, you got some potential.
Like your material to be worked with.
Yeah, you got some potential.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, I was interested to talk to you. You kind of caught my attention. And I came away from it going like, I didn't have a representation. I had some contacts that I made. I didn't have anything that came of it other than just like, okay, I met some people who are like, done serious stuff in LA and New York. And they were like, yeah, you got potential. So I was like, okay, I'm not kidding myself. Like I do actually have some skill here in this acting
So
thing.
it gave you a boost up to your confidence a little bit.
Yeah, it gave me the sort of the affirmation that like, I'm not like delusional. I feel like I have something. I have got a long way to go, but I've got something. And this acting thing I could take seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was when I decided like, okay, I'm going to take acting seriously.
So then the convention ended. You met some people, you exchanged maybe some connections, and then you were going there to decide to which level you're going to take the acting to, right? You're like, I'm going to decide if I'm going to go working career or if I'm going to give this acting thing a shot.
Right.
And this kind of I would assume, I'm learning a lot, by the way, from this. So I didn't know these like conventions like that existed, but.
And by the way, some of them there are scams that do this. So you have to be really careful because there are showcases. They advertise showcases that are scams where they just take your money. They're not legit people.
And then you show up and there's nobody there.
Or they're people that are there, but they're not worth talking to.
Got it.
So
do you have any recommendations? Is there any?
I don't know what's going on because I haven't looked at this in 10 years. So
gotcha. Okay.
I don't know what's there, but you just do your research and make sure it's legit.
Yeah. Do your homework, kids. You come back, you're like, okay, you got a little bit boost of confidence and kind of maybe an idea that this is something that you can then focus on seriously.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
I went to LA for a visit. And for a specific visit, there was a short film competition that I met someone at that showcase that ran called 168 in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out to, I literally got on a plane to fly out to do an audition for this short film competition.
Did you get it?
Well, it's a whole long story, but yes.
It's the short version of it.
Yeah, the short version, I got something.
Okay.
It was interesting because I went to the showcase audition, for all the filmmakers in LA who were making short films. And it's an opportunity to work with LA filmmakers. And I did my auditions. a week went by. They were getting ready to start shooting on a Friday, I feel like. And it was Wednesday and had no contact about anything. I'm like, I flew all the way to LA and I'm not even get to do a short film. And then on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, after I'd been there for a week, I got a call back for the lead in a Western that they were going to fly out of state to shoot on a ranch. And I was like, oh, money. Yes. So it was down to me and one other guy. I went to the audition at the callback. And it was really intense. And I was there with the director and the producers in their living room, and they were workshopping. And they're like, "Okay, that was amazing. We love it. Okay, we got one other guy. We're gonna let you know tonight because we got to make a decision." And the next day, they're like, "We're still torn between the two of you." And I'm literally by my phone the entire day, sitting in in LA with nothing to do. And they're texting me "So sorry to keep you waiting. We're a split decision here. We're gonna let you know today for sure." And then finally, and of course, in the pit of my stomach, I'm like, oh, I'm going to lose it. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it. It's going to be all pins and needles for nothing. Because I've been in this place so many times. I've been on hundreds of auditions.
The expectation and the waiting game.
And then they called me and said, so, some of us really loved your performance. But it just so happens that the lead actress that we cast happened to do her callback with the lead actor. And since we know that they already have chemistry, we're just going to go with them. Because we don't have time to bring you in and read with the other girl, too. And that's just how it is with auditions. It's not even that you didn't have a good enough performance. It's just the logistics just worked out easier for us to do with the other guy. And so I was really bummed. He was like, okay, my this was the perfect role for me and I lost it and now I've got nothing. And then the next day I was like, I guess I came to LA for nothing. And then I got a call from someone on one of the filmmakers and was like, hey, we saw your audition at the showcase. And they're like, do you want to come and do a table read with us? Not a role, it's a table read. I was like, whatever. I'm not doing anything else, sir. I'll come. So I did the table read, and there was a role that they still hadn't cast yet in the table read. And
did you read that role?
I read that role. Yeah, they were like, we haven't cast this role. Just so you know, we're not giving it to you, but we want you to read this, and we'll see.
We want to see.
You want to see. So we did the table read, and afterward, they were like, yeah, really, really good work. And the director and producer were like, so, yeah, I guess, we're shooting tomorrow, so we'll get back to you soon. And I was like, well, we're shooting tomorrow, so why don't we decide now? And I was like, do I need to read it to you again? Do you need to see something else? And they're like, no, you were great. And I was like, so do I have it or not? And they're like, okay, you can have the role.
Nice.
And guess what? It was a Western shooting on a ranch in LA. And so the next day I was shooting a Western at a Western town, and I got to do a short film in LA, so it was a success.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Would you call that was your kind of a break?
It was kind of a break. I mean, I flew to Los Angeles with nothing, and I got to be on a movie set, and I actually ended up doing 3 films. Long story, but I ended up doing 3 short films that week.
Like back to back.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yep. And I got to work with like some of the people were like, working recurring television series role actors. So I was like, oh, these guys are like the real deal, like real Hollywood working actors. And
you
so for me, that was a big break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you haven't moved out here though, right? You kind of came and visited LA.
No, yeah. No,
so
it was a one-off thing.
So then when you went back, were you was there any kind of a low point where like, now I'm back here and I kind of want to go back there and do all the things that I just did? Or
that was kind of like that, among a couple other things, was kind of like the completion of yes, I'm going to affirm that like I can be an actor.
I am an actor.
I am an actor, and I could do this as a pursuit, as a business, as a profession.
Did you get paid on any of the shorts that you did in LA?
No.
So was there any paycheck for any of these years, or was there ever like, oh, I got paid as an actor?
there was paychecks. I mean, during that time, I shot another feature film, and that was paid. It was a very low pay, but I shot another feature film during those first few years that was paid. I did a lot of industrials; those were all paid. So there was definitely some money, but it wasn't like, oh, I could live off this.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Commercials? Any commercials?
A little bit of commercials. There wasn't a lot of commercial work, and I wasn't that interested in commercials. The thing I liked about industrials was like it was an actual scene. You were doing an acting scene, and there was a script with
what were you doing?
Characters. So industrials, for people who don't know, is a term for basically movies that are made for a company to use as educational material. So basically you're illustrating something with the scene. So they tend to be cheesy or like a lot of exposition, but you're
Here
acting.
is how we make our cereal.
No, it's more like hey, Sally, do you want to get drinks with me tonight? No, why not? Like, don't do this, kids, in the workplace. This is sexual harassment.
Oh shit, real.
Yeah. But I'll tell you though, there was some really awesome industrials I got to do, because being in the DC area, there's a lot of military bases and DoD stuff. So I got to do industrials with the Army, and we got to have like Black Hawks and Humvees and like run around with like flak jackets and M16. So
fun.
There were some cool industrials I got to do.
And then you can put that on your resume. Yes, I have military experience.
Military experience,
and I know how to hold a gun. And
those are some of the coolest experiences that I've had as an actor. Not the coolest, but I mean some of the really outstanding ones. I've got to be embedded with actual active duty units and do like drills with them on camera.
How did they take you in? Were they like, this kid actor running around with an M16 with us here?
I mean, you have like a boot camp where you have to like do those training drills to like prep you for it. But I carry, as an actor, like I relate in the way that I'm supposed to. And so I carry the authenticity of like, picking up on the vibe and relating to people the way I'm supposed to. I know like in their minds, it's like sort of weird. I was like the squad leader. So like I'm telling like actual legit, like
soldiers.
Hardcore, like some of them I think were like rangers, like ranger level training guys, and I'm like, like, okay, like, watch my 6, and they're like, okay, copy, Sarge, and like they're the real deal, and I'm pretending like I'm the boss. But if you can pull it off, for the camera, like they know this is for a movie, so
nice.
They know that they can't do what I'm doing.
Yeah, probably don't want to either.
Yeah, don't want to either.
You come back to the DC or the East Coast, and you've shot some. You're like, okay, I worked in Hollywood, right? Sort of a little bit.
Yeah.
What's the next process like?
So I'm a little fuzzy on the timeline of that year-ish period, but somewhere around there, I also directed and produced my first short film during that time, because I was like,
I want to direct, I want to produce. When did that
no,
come
it was like,
picture?
I want to act. Okay, so when you're doing low-budget film, most of the time, almost all the time, it's like we don't have money, or we have so little money that we have short time, to pay people. So like couple takes, like move on, we got to go. So all of my experience was always like a rush. Okay, as soon as we got it, we got to move on. And so honestly, like the biggest motivation for me was like, I wish I could do a film where I'm like, I just want to do it until I'm happy. Like, wouldn't that be amazing?
Do a couple of takes, try different things,
experiment. So I was like, let me get some friends together. I know a lot of people who are interested in filmmaking, and let's make a little like lab, like a film lab, and let's experiment and let's all learn through the process. So I approached a handful of guys and I said, let's work together. Let's practice. I'll get some equipment and let's make it, eventually make a short film. And we're not going to have any money, but what I can give you is opportunity to grow in your craft. And so we literally spent almost a year working on an 8-minute short film, but we got to, and it was just on the weekends. We do like 1 day a week, maybe. And it was like, we're going to play as much as we want to. And it was amazing because, as a director, I got to like watch the screen and be like, okay, yeah, I didn't like that take. Let me try a different way. And like, okay, I didn't like that take. Let me try a different way. And just do that and really stretch my boundaries. But in addition to that, as a director, I got to say like, well, let me play those movies in my head of like how I see a film going and let me create that on screen. And that was, I don't have a pursuit or passion of being a director right now, but that was really gratifying to be able to envision something in my mind and then see the soliloquy on screen.
And put it on the screen.
Yeah.
Did you had a part then, because when you see like takes, right? But then like putting those takes on the timeline and also doing the edit in your head, did you then stay in with the project into the edit?
I was there running things every step of the way from the idea to post-production.
And so was this your first experience kind of from concept, script, filming, editing?
Never been behind the camera before.
Got it.
Yeah, but I was there. I mean, like I had my friend who was the DP and the editor, and I would sit at his computer and I'd watch him like manipulate frame by frame, and I'd be like, nope, one more frame. Okay, yeah, play that. Nope, one frame back. Okay, yeah, let's do that edit. Okay.
Yeah, and that's an exciting process and a big steep learning curve.
There's a moment, like I enjoyed every aspect of it, and there was a moment where we had this like sort of jump scene in the film or jump cut. And we were playing with that edit, and it was like this frame to that frame, and we found the right frame to cut on to create the effect I was looking for. It was like touchdown. And I was like so jazzed because I would watch it. I watched it 100 times over and over again, and every time I got the same effect for myself, and I created it. So it was almost like artificial intelligence. Like it was like I created this thing, and now it's got a life of its own.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So man, where did you go? Where did the career really picked up for you? When like, okay, what was the paying break? Like, what was the? I'm looked at as an actor. I get hired as an actor. I'm being sought out as an actor. I'm being offered these parts, or
Well, there was a very definitive transition for me. So I did the LA visit. I shot this short film, soliloquy, and I got into some festivals. I even ended up winning best.
This is the short film that you did
that I directed.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was it called?
The Soliloquy. Yeah, it was a modern adaptation of Macbeth.
Okay.
And I got into some festivals. I won Best Picture. I won Best Director at some little film festivals. I actually won Best Director at Idlewild here in California.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for my first time making a film.
What was the budget on that movie? What did you guys shoot?
I think I spent like $1,000 on it.
That's amazing, man.
For like renting lights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your DP was a buddy. He had a camera.
Yeah, he had a DSLR, a couple DSLRs. Yeah. So we just threw it together.
That goes to festivals. There's some success with it.
There was some success with it.
Traction.
Yeah, and I had I had the showcase. I got good feedback on that. I got a small regional agent in the Southeast that was representing me, submitting me auditions for TV shows. Then I was actually taping for actual television shows, like legit acting work. It was the end of 2011. And I decided I'm going to quit my full-time job and become an actor. And I still had a part-time job, but I was like, I'm like making room. I'm taking a pay cut, and I'm going to make this work.
Yep.
And I signed up for a class with a acting coach in New York City called, his name's Josh Pice, Committed Impulse, which I highly recommend. It's a great program. And I was living in DC, and I got on the bus every Thursday and went 5 hours to class to do like 4 hours of really intense physical exertion acting exercises in New York City, and then crashed on a buddy's couch.
Okay, I was gonna say, and then 5 hour bus ride back.
I think a couple times I did go straight back, but usually I would crash on a buddy's couch in New York City, and then get on a bus and come home the next day. And I did that for like 9 weeks, and that was like I'm gonna like level up. I'm gonna get some like good training, and I'm gonna pursue this acting thing like seriously as business. So 2012 is when I started, like, I'm a professional actor.
Did you have an agent by this time?
I had a small agent in the Southeast, but I didn't have one in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to them. I was talking to people trying to get one.
2012.
Yeah, 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you SAG?
I was. I think I was SAG, because I from a commercial. I think I got SAG.
You got your SAG card.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How important do you think that is, by the way, to anybody who's listening, to be SAG?
SAG?
Yeah.
You know, it's a thing that happens as you do your thing, as you do your journey. And if you're in a small market, like a right to work state, there's not going to be a lot of union work, so it's probably going to be irrelevant to you for a while. If you're coming to LA or New York, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think a lot of people spend way too much time thinking about it.
Like being in the union.
Yeah.
Or not being in the union.
Like,
just go make something.
Just do the thing, and when it's time to be in the union, like, you'll be a must join, and then you'll join.
2012, you took that. Let's mention that one more time. What was that New York acting coach?
Josh Pice.
Josh Pice.
Yeah.
Is there a school name or just
Committed Impulse?
Committed Impulse.
Yeah.
Josh Pice. New York City, Manhattan, Brooklyn.
Manhattan. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll put some of these links for some of these recommendations in the below description of the video.
Yeah. And Carol Fox Prescott, I was training with her. I still do. I still work with her.
I love those stories where, like, even like when you look at somebody who's extremely successful now, still has the people that they started with, and they still have them in their life, like as their coaches, managers, or hold on to people, friends, people that help them. So now 2012, you start booking some more serious pay and more of a bigger.
Well, 2012 happened, and I was, like, redoubling my efforts, submitting to everything, going on lots of auditions, and for 6 months I didn't get anything. So it was like I was busy. Like, I mean, I had shot on a $7 million indie film, like with my own trailer and everything at that point already. And
this is after the LA.
Right around that same time.
Right.
It was right around that same time as LA.
A $7 million indie it's a big indie.
Yeah,
it's a decent budget.
So I mean, it wasn't any great remarkable project or big success, but it was like, it had infrastructure and it had big sets. It was a period film, and
was this the first time you were on, like, big set?
That film was the first time I was on a big set. Yeah, as an actor.
But you've been on a set now for a while. You kind of seen, but seeing that big first time production, all the logistics and that infrastructure.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah,
it was exciting.
Get your own trailer.
Yeah,
I got my own trailer.
Yeah, it was exciting. But I'm saying at that point, like, I had sort of broken through where, like, I was getting paid work, and I had been on, like, a real film set. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to give all this extra time now to acting. And then the first 6 months, I didn't have any work. So I was like, crickets. Okay, well, was this a good idea? And I'll tell you, one thing that I've seen over and over in my career, and what happened that summer, is that I was contacted to do a little short film, a little horror short film, for like a few $100. And that was like the first thing I'd been offered anything. And I was like, well, it looks pretty chintzy, like, for a project, but I'm like, okay, they're paying me to act, so I'm doing it. so I did this little short film, and then another buddy that I'd worked with in the past was directing his first feature, and he was like, "Hey, we got this little day player role. You know, it's like ultra low budget, but you know, pay you a little something and come out and do this role." So I did that. I'm like, okay, well, now I'm doing a feature. I was in a small part. It's also really low budget and chintzy kind of production, but I got that. So it was like, okay, I did this work, and then a few weeks later, I did that thing, and it creates momentum. So work begets work, and also winning creates confidence. So by doing these projects, I feel like it's shifted me into the I'm working as an actor, and I'm used to being on set, and like I'm in a mindset of like I do this. And so then I booked a lead in a longer short film that was SAG union film, and it was like 12 hours a day for 3 weeks of work as the lead actor, and like it had a budget. I mean, it was like, I don't know, it was technically an industrial, but it was like a fully fleshed out film, and it was probably hundreds of thousands of dollars on the budget. And they had like full blown, you know, good DP, and we had really cool sets. We got to work on some really awesome sets, like shutting down airports and taking over 757 jets, and being at the FBI and CIA and stuff. So it was a really cool project, Game of Pawns. And so I got to play the lead for weeks, like every day, going to work and doing my thing, and that was a huge confidence boost.
Sorry, can we pause for a second? Just or keep recording.
Yeah.
Can you run this out to Eric? They need to move my van.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No.
Somebody on the stage B needs to get into the stage.
No worries.
You want me to keep
Yeah, just keep recording.
It's on him currently.
It's on you, man.
It's on me.
It's on you.
So, and then to complete that story, so I did Game of Pawns for a few weeks, and then I finished that, and I it was amazing because like just that getting to go to work every day and doing the same character and working with the same people, like you start to grow because you're building momentum, and you're really it's going from just like oh, here's your thing, here's your audition, like do the trick, to like do the trick until it's like second nature. And that was really powerful for me. And it was also cool because I was working with, you know, a group of professionals, and they were like, yeah, like you're a really great actor, and like, and you've got really good
Boost
tools.
boost
the confidence. And I walked out of that short film, and shortly thereafter I booked Killing Lincoln.
But that was your big.
And that was when I was like, okay, now I'm a professional actor. Like in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm working with, you know, people. I'm working with Ridley Scott's company.
It's also like when you're first working with people that are all striving to go to the NFL, the big leagues, but then when you're finally there and you're the one who like broke in, but all those guys that have been around, like that guy's been a DP for 25 years, and it's like a whole nother level. It helps, it lifts you up really quickly to get, you know, it's like, yo, everybody here was where I was. They stuck to it, and now they're here, and we're working on this big production or this professional, you know, this bigger set. So Killing Lincoln was TV film, television
Made
film?
for TV film, yeah.
TV film. How long was that, and what was the experience of like a big break project like that?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was like I was over the moon because it was like so validating after being in a limbo for so long of like, okay, like I'm doing this, you know. And I remember.
How's your family, by the way? Sorry, at this point. So now, is there a support? Like, oh, was there ever a talk with like your parents too? Like, hey, this got serious. Okay, like you're I guess maybe when you quit your full-time day job, right, and got a part-time job.
I mean, they were super nervous about that. But they were never. I mean, they were never like super supportive because they didn't know if it was a good idea. But they were never like
against it either.
Like how dare you? You're ruining your life either kind of thing. It's just kind of like I don't know if this is a good idea. But when I booked Killing Lincoln, it was exciting for me because of the people involved were amazing, but also it was a period film, and I love period films. I love history. I'm a big history buff, and so getting to like do the costumes and be in the environments of the past, like that's like the closest thing you get to time travel.
Yeah, the costumes and props and things like that, I always feel like when I watch the actors rehearse as an AD or now a director, it's interesting. But then when you put the costume and you're in the environment and the props and everything, it just takes this whole new energy, this new level. It's almost like, wow, it's real. You know, a lot of times I feel like the costumes are the character itself, like the costume for very specific, you know, roles. The character is its own. The clothing is its own kind of a character that adds on to the body of the actor. And so now you're working actor, and this is something I've learned is when you get to the, and I wouldn't say it was the top, but it was the, like, you've broken through a certain period. So through like a certain level, and a lot of times it's harder to stay at that level than like getting that one opportunity. But like, okay, now I'm here on Killing Link, right? How do you, what would be your like advice, or like what was your process on making sure, like you said, you were over the moon, and now like, okay, well, this is great, but this is going to end 3 or 4 weeks. How do I do this again? Like, what was the mindset to like, I need to make sure that I make connections here, or that I go from here to another, like a project like this?
Yeah. I mean, I think for one thing, you know, my role in Killing Lincoln was not the most flattering, because the way they wrote the script and directed the film, the assassins or the co-conspirators in the film are supposed to be mysterious, and kind of their identity is supposed to be secret. So their goal was not to have like a clear shot of the faces of any of the co-conspirators. So we had a lot of camera time and we had a lot of lines, but like the idea was that they couldn't recognize that it was you. And so that's part of the reason why I got it, because they couldn't go out to a bigger Hollywood actor who's like, we're not going to see your face really, because they'd be like, well, no, why would you hire me, you know? So it was both a kind of a blessing and a curse in that way. But you know, I took it, you know, it was a little bit of a little mental block or a challenge for me, because it's like, I feel like a second class citizen, because they're like, you know, oh, we don't turn this way, we don't want to see your face, you know. And that's kind of like the biggest slap in the face to an actor, is like, yeah, just, you're doing great, just can you turn, we don't want to see your face. So it's like,
what? Okay.
It's a little demoralizing when it's like, you know, everything's great about you, just we don't like your face. It's kind of how it feels, you know. There was a story reason for this,
right?
But it just felt that way, you know.
Yeah.
So it was hard, and it's kind of like well, like, why am I even acting, you know? Because I mean, this is the voice was important, but it's like, it's sort of like half acting, because we don't care about how your facial expression, which is normally the most important thing in your acting. So what I really decide, what I do with all of my roles, and what I really had to like be focused on in intending with this role, is that I'm going to give this 100%, and I'm going to give the best performance I can, even if they don't see any of it. And I feel like that was like the biggest takeaway. And I feel like the relationships and the rapport and experience that I got from people and the feedback was because I took it seriously, and I gave it 100%, even though it wasn't necessary in every case. And what I told myself too is like, if nothing else, like, this is an opportunity. I'm getting paid to practice acting. I'm getting paid to get better at acting. And so if they don't even use it in the movie, like, one thing I will get out of this is I'll be a better actor.
And I was paid to be here.
So that's my mentality. And I think that's why it was a success for me.
So you kind of started to talk about that a little bit. I wanted to ask you, so when you're now presented a role, so let's kind of fast forward. So Lincoln, and then there was a few other successful projects along the line. So now you're getting characters. Now you're as an actor start working on, like, you get a script, you're reading it for a certain character, or you know, there's a role there for you. What's your process of breaking down the script for yourself, for the character, developing the character? And then I kind of want to talk to you about a little bit from my point of view as a director or an AD, like, what is your process in communicating with director about the role and whatnot? But let's start with, so let's close the chapter on, like, so now Lincoln was a stepping stone to more repetitive work that came on that level.
Yeah.
So now you're a working actor. At some point, you must have like really say to yourself, this is what I'm doing. I'm an actor. Right? I'm a working actor. This is a paycheck. This is a career. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep working it. Which one thing, by the way, to probably take away from this is that a lot of people just give up quickly. Like you've listening to you've had many moments where like you could have just like take the way out and just go do something else, and you stuck to it, and you moved forward, and you took another step, and it just, that hard work pays off. You just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it, and now you're doing it. So what was the time that you told yourself, oh, I'm an actor, like for real, I'm an actor, this is a career, I'm getting paid, and this is all I want to do?
I mean, I feel like I decided I'm a professional actor at the beginning of 2012. Like I've made this choice, and so it is what I am. I think it was around that time of like Game of Pawns and booking Killing Lincoln that I was like, okay, I'm a professional.
And then you're like, I want to stay on this level.
Yeah,
I want to
stay on this level and keep growing.
Keep growing. Okay.
Keep getting better.
So now, fast forward a few years, you have more shows, more TV and film features under your belt. When you get a script now as an actor, when you first like start getting the offers, like, hey, we want you for this, we want you for this, what's your first approach with the script, with breaking it down as a character? What do you look for? How do you analyze it? Is it right for me and wrong, or
Yeah, so well, you're saying when I have the role and how do I get ready? So it's completely varies with every role. It depends on a lot of things.
I think we've covered enough to like how you got to the point of getting the roles, the trajectory that you've put yourself forward and getting the roles.
Yeah.
So now you're getting them.
Right.
What's the process of breaking it down? That was basically
So, there are some times where I have like 2-line character that they told me the night before that I booked. And they're like, hey, you have this role. It's 2 lines. You're there tomorrow. And there are times where I get a lead role and they're like, we're shooting in a month. So there's a lot of range of preparation depending on like the size of the role and the amount of time that I have to get ready. So it really varies between each role.
So how do you get ready for the 2-liners?
So the 2-liners is, with the, the one day to get ready. You make sure that those 2 lines frontwards and backwards. You can say them in your sleep. And then you just try to get as much information. If I can't see the script, try to see what, the show is about, or try to see what the director has made films in the past, like get an idea for like, well, what kind of a environment am I getting myself into? And then you also just kind of have to have this fly by the seat of your pants thing where it's like, I'm let going of the fact that I don't have a lot of preparation, but I'm going to just decide like, what is this character? I might only be showing up for a moment, but like, what is this character's intention? Like, why are they here? What's important to them? Like, what do I want in this situation? What am I trying to get? And then just commit to that and just let go of the fact that I don't have a lot of preparation or understanding or like, background on this.
Can you give an example of a 2-line character or something that you would like? Can we just talk about for a second? Can you try to go?
Yeah, I had my first episodic television role was on NBC Revolution, and my lines were, hey, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. It was you don't move. Those are my lines. And I drove to North Carolina. I drove to North Carolina.
Don't move. So those were separate. Your first line was you.
2 lines. Yeah. You. Don't move.
Don't move. Was it like a same scene or completely like you shot one in the morning?
No, it was one scene. I only had one scene.
Okay.
One scene, and those were my lines. And I drove, the day before to get there, and I was on set all day waiting for my big scene.
And this is what year is this? Do you remember?
2013, I think.
Okay. Do you know which episode? Do you remember which episode?
Yeah, it was something about Atlanta. I think episode 8 of season 1. something about Atlanta, the bombing of Atlanta or something.
Oh,
like
wow. Okay.
that. Yeah, I remember I was standing in the waiting room with Billy Burke, and I was arresting him in the scene, and we were chatting. Yeah,
Don't move.
yeah. And he was very friendly. Billy was very friendly, and he was like,
Were you a cop?
I was a cop.
Cop arresting him.
Cop arresting him.
So they put you in the uniform. So you're like, preparation wise, okay, so I have this line. You addressing the other character, don't move, giving him some kind of direction from authority. So you're authoritative figure, right?
Yeah.
Did you, I don't know, look up cops or kind of, behavior of arrest or anything like that? Or just kind of like, this is pretty straightforward?
That kind of context, like I've never been a cop or a soldier, but I audition for those a lot. So like that frame of mind is something that I'm used to being in. So like the authority figure, like having a gun, like that's something I'm comfortable with. So there's not a lot of like preparation that I need to like get used to that. And I will say preparation is about bridging the gap between who you are and who the character is. And the more like the character you are, the more familiar the character is within your frame of reference, the less you need to prepare in some ways, like in terms of like the accoutrements of the character, like what he does for a living or like how he behaves. You have that, in your bank. Whereas if you're doing something that's like completely out of the norm for you and even your acting experience, then there's a lot more work you have to do to like change yourself to fit that mold. So for something like this, I'm pretty facile. It's pretty facile, for me. But.
And you had that, what do you call it? Not it was industrial experience with the military,
with cops
right?
and military. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm used to this milieu.
Right.
But this is set in the future. So it's a futuristic setting. So I watched the show. So I watched the show to see like, hey, what's the setting? What do other soldiers look like? What do other cops look like in this world?
Okay.
What's the tone?
So some pretty badass costumes and things like that, right?
Yeah. It's cool. It was a cool vibe.
So
for a TV, it's different than a film because the TV, I get to see what the show looks like. I get to watch the episodes.
Yeah,
that's my preparation.
Right.
I really loved Revolution. That's really cool. You're on it.
Here's the world. What's funny? I went to a film festival once, and someone came up to me like, "You were in Revolution." I'm like, "Yeah, for 30 seconds." They're like, "I recognize you."
That's amazing.
Like, you must be a big fan of the show.
Well, I want to get to that. I want to talk to you about that.
I want to finish telling you about the shoot though. So I got on set finally after waiting all day. Literally, I get on set. The first AD comes up. He's like, "Okay, talent's on set, blocking, rehearsal, and go." They didn't tell me where I'm going, what I'm doing. I was just like, "Okay, well, there's the alley. There's Billy Burke. I guess I'm gonna run up and point the gun at him." So I just came on set. I ran up. I pointed the gun. I yelled my lines at him, and they're like, "Okay, that's good. Ready? Let's roll." I'm like, holy cow, they're in a rush. But then
TV moves fast.
We shot that arrest scene for 6 hours, I think.
How many takes?
Like 50 takes. Like I was running into this alley and shouting, "You don't move," like till I was blue in the face, like all night. Yeah.
What was happening?
And then they cut like 90% of my shot anyway. So.
Wow, interesting. Well, the movie magic, right?
Yeah.
So, you were preparing for such a small role, and you had some experience. I want to go back to the cast type, the authoritative figure, and the one you. Do you think that's because you're 6'5"?
Well, it's a combination. I mean, there's comedic actors like what's that British guy with the glasses? He's like 6'7".
Stephen Merchant.
Stephen Merchant.
I'm 6'7", so
yeah, Stephen Merchant.
I always wonder if
he's not the authority figure because he's a goofball and he's tall. So I think it's the combination of my intensity as a personality and the height.
Voice, tone of voice,
yeah,
the way you speak to people. Got it.
Yeah,
I've always wondered, like, I'm 6'7", I could never be an actor.
It's harder. It's definitely hard. When I went to that showcase, I met an agent from New York, and the first thing she did when she looked at me, she was like, "You're tall." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "It's limiting."
Straight up, just like, "All right, thanks."
I was like, "Yeah, I know," but I was like, "So's Liam Neeson."
How tall is he?
He's almost 6'5".
Okay. Yeah, I think the 6'4", 6'5" is digestible.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to like 6'6", 6'7", 6'8".
Then you have to be like the bad guy on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Like. So I was like, oh, fine, I'll stay behind the camera.
Brian the Giant.
Yeah. Danny Trejo gave me a nickname. First day he saw me on the set, Treetop.
Treetop. Oh, that's a good one.
It's just
Treetop.
Treetop. Where's Treetop? All right, I don't get me in trouble with Treetop. Yeah, he was great. It's a pleasure working with him. But
sorry, what was the thing that you were saying before?
I don't know.
The preparation.
Oh yeah. So
or the typecast.
So I was going to ask you about I actually was genuinely curious about the height. Like, do you feel like you have the authoritative figure because you can kind of tower over people?
Well,
are you trying to avoid being like? Are you trying to be very diverse with your roles, or do you like? I get it. I'm comfortable with this, like military, police, like type thing, FBI agent maybe, or.
So the advice that I learned when I was starting out was that you have to take whatever your best asset is as a person, as an actor, as an artist, and focus on being the best at that, putting your best foot forward. Like you've got like, your best shot, like whatever's your best punch, just get really good at your best punch so you can be the most competitive at that. And you're the best asset and tool for the industry, for people with that. And then, break through, because it's really hard to get anywhere. And when you get somewhere, then think about expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been something.
So your advice would be start narrow,
yeah,
and then break through, and then like punch a small hole,
yeah,
get past the wall, and then when you get there, expand.
Yeah, as a general intention. And I'm not saying that you can't work on anything else. I'm just saying as a marketing, like self-development, like focus point, like that's I think the best strategy.
What was your what was your best punch?
Was the authoritative
military
police, the henchman character, that's intimidation factor or authority figure, or taken seriously guy. So
when you're given more than 12 hours to prepare for your role, that you might end up doing 50 takes on, though, what's your process like?
Well, so my process is also, even if I have time, is custom to each role. So like when I played young George Washington in Alone Yet Not Alone, I have all this an actual person to prepare. So I read biographies of George Washington, and I went to his home in Mount Vernon, and I hung around reenactors who, like, from the time period, and I took movement lessons and horseback riding lessons, and like I did things to
become him.
Then when there's like a role where I'm playing like a contemporary guy who's kind of a similar personality as me, and all of that, like I don't do it, and it's just an imaginary character. I can be whatever I want. Then I don't do any of that. And so then it's all about just plumbing into more of like the focusing on the emotional aspects of, what's the backstory I have for this character, and, what is it going on underneath the scenes for me. And another thing, but one thing that goes for every major role that I play is just studying the script. So reading the script over and over again, like imagining, what that would be like to be in that scene, and, writing down what is it that, I'm doing in the scene, and what is it that I want, and what's happening beforehand, and what's happening afterward.
Do you mainly get the whole script now? Do you usually not at this point in the stage of the
sometimes
career,
even for the audition they send me the whole script.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you do like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of a steps of, you get your agent sends you manager's agent now, sends you a script, and they want you for this, or this is what you could be auditioning for. So at this point, audition, then the callback, you get it. Do you then work on the character yourself, and then kind of show up and meet with the director and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking? Or do you go first to the director and say, what are you thinking? This is what I'm thinking. and then maybe do a screen test or like do a little reading or table read or whatever. If there's another character, a person, do a table read with them. Can you just do a kind of a quick circle of the when you get the offer, like this, we might be interested, then you get it, what the process is, like that, the breakdown of the character to how it ends up being filmed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can tell you with like the last couple of features that I've shot, it's literally just I self-tape in my house, and from I'm traveling somewhere, or taping in my hotel room a scene or scenes and send them in of the internet to the casting director, and then they offer me the role. Like that's it. Like increasingly so, it's just like I tape TV shows, feature films. I tape something in my house or wherever I'm traveling to, send them a tape, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna make you the offer. So it can be very fast and very like distant. So you get the role, they send you the script, they're like, here are your shoot dates, you have a week, 3 weeks, a month to prepare, and then that's when we're shooting. A lot of times there's not really any contact, especially if it's a bigger project. There's not really any direct contact from the director. If you're not the star, of the film, especially. And even when you are, there's not necessarily like a lot of communication with the director. Not always, but not necessarily. So I'm saying sometimes I don't even talk to them until I get on set. Like you show up on set, I've studied my lines, I've prepped the script and got my character together, and I get on set, and then the director meets me for the first time, and they're like, okay, so glad you're here, here's what the scene is about today, this is what we're doing, like we're gonna do blocking now, and like that's it. With this film that I just shot in a couple weeks ago, it was similar. I taped, they gave me the offer, I agreed to do the film, I started studying the script, but the director did want to be more collaborative. So we did a Zoom and we talked all about the character. Backstory.
Yeah.
And
because have you ever showed up on set and like, okay, action, you blocking, and then let's say you were limping and director yells, cut, Josh, why
are you limping?
Why are you limping? Well, I was, when I was preparing for the role.
I thought it'd be cool.
I
heard Ryan Gosling tell a story once about how he put on like 40 pounds for a role, and he got to set and the director was like, why are you fat?
Yeah, that was the Lovely Bones.
The Lovely Bones?
Yeah, that was.
He's like, you're fired.
Because Mark Wahlberg took his job.
Yeah. So I've never had that, thankfully. No.
Okay.
Never had that. Honestly, most of the time I feel like I don't get enough. Like I just show up and they're like, oh, that's great, moving on. So I'm like, can we talk about it a little bit?
Right, like, hey, I want to explore this. Do you prefer working on the character yourself? Do you research becoming the character yourself, or do you prefer the first approaching the director and saying, like, if it's a more of a lead role, let's say you're in the top 4 or 5 of the cast, like the close supporting or the lead, and then there's like, hey, what's the backstory? Do you prefer to create that yourself and then bring in and offer it, or do you like to come to the director first and say, hey, so this is what I'm thinking, this is what do you thinking, what do you want? Like, well, I read it, clearly you like some of my performance here, but now let's get into the nitty gritty, like the backstory, and you have an accent, or
So this film I just shot, I was a co-lead, and the way we did it is kind of how I prefer to do it. So I read the script, I get an idea of like what I think the character is, and then we jump on a call with the director and say, you, the director, like, what's your vision for this film? Like, what's your idea of the character? So I know like where they're coming from, and then they can sort of set the stage of like, this is the context framework I'm thinking of. And then when I go and break it down, the character, and really dive into what is it that I'm thinking, I know the world that they're coming from. And so they're not going to be two separate things. Like, it might be different, it might be a little bit of a different angle, but I'm like, okay, I know the frame of reference for where they're trying to go. And I can say, okay, it's somewhere within that vicinity. And then I'm not going to come up with something where, they're like, okay, where's your square? And I'm like, oh, I brought a triangle.
Yeah. You're going left, I'm going right.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to where you like,
yes,
created the character?
It happened, and I lost the role. So that's not the only reason, but someone did offer me a feature film, like a lead role in a feature film. And I was a little bit different from what they were thinking, but they're like, after we did the callback, they were like, we want you to do the role. And I was telling them, you know, I think it actually should be like, this would be more interesting to go in this direction. And a little while after they offered me the role, they're like, you know what? I thought about it. Actually, I'm going to give it to somebody else who's like the opposite of me. Like,
Wants to go
like
this, yeah.
not just the opposite idea, but like an opposite person, like completely opposite of me. And they're like, that's really what the story needs to be. And they were kind of like considering going in my direction, but it was just a creative difference.
Right. Was it an eye-opening experience?
You know, I mean, I was excited for the potential of like I said, what I thought the role could be. And it wasn't what the kind of film that they wanted to make. And so it was kind of like, well, if that's who you are and what you want, then we can't work together. Wasn't meant to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are you a big believer in that philosophy of like, it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be.
I'm a big believer in focusing on what I can change and control, and not focusing on what I can't control.
How about speaking things into existence? Like,
I do believe in affirming things. Yeah. I think I don't like it's meant to be because that gives me a sense of like fatalism that I wanted to ask that I have no input in the course of things. And I absolutely believe that we have freedom of choice. We have free will, and we have the responsibility and the privilege of being able to affect the future.
Have you ever been told no, and you didn't take the no, and you pursued and convinced, or had any kind of interaction like, this is my version of speaking into existence, to where like, hey, Brian, you can't do your first feature as a $50 million movie. It just doesn't happen. And I said, well, if the script is right, if all the ducks are in the row, if the team is right, the people are behind me, and I dedicated time and I did my work, and then the budget is like this one line item of the whole thing, it shouldn't really matter, you know, this is coming from like a director point of view. So as an actor, were you ever like, probably, and then you're like, well, hear me out, watch this is what I can do, kind of not taking no for an answer, but at the same time doing the opposite of, like you were saying, that meant to be, it's meant to be, but taking it a little bit further is like, well, it might not meant to be, but let me try this. And did that ever convert it into getting a job?
Converted into getting a job.
Like you got to know,
right?
It's like, Josh, we're kind of thinking a different route, and like, well, all right, let me do a different route. Let me try this. What, you know, instead of just taking the no and be like, well, okay, you don't think so, it's meant to be, then meant to be.
I don't know if I've ever gotten a role from a no. Maybe it'll come to me, but I mean, I think that story I told you about the short film, when they're like, yeah, we'll think about it, and I was like, well, yes or no, like. That was kind of like
and that table read.
Yeah, that table
like,
read.
How about now you tell me?
How about now you tell me? I think that was a kind of taking a maybe to a yes. Then I think that other film I just told you about was like, he was kind of no in the sense of like, well, this is the character that I've envisioned. And I'm like, well, how about this way? And he was like, oh, that could be cool too. So I sort of turned a no into a yes, but then the yes went back to no because he was still like married to that idea. So I changed his mind temporarily, but not ultimately. But I don't know if I've ever had a role where they were like, yeah, we don't want you for this role, and I talked them into it.
Got it.
And I think, you know, like the thing with it being too tall, it's that's can kind of be the issue where it's like, they're like, oh, we don't want him because of this. And we're like, but you should do it anyways because of this. And they're like, okay, but then they uncast you after all, because ultimately their mind's still made up in a different direction. But I have had times where, you know, I'm working on a project and they're like, oh, this is how it's going to end, or this is like what the scene is going to go or say. And I'm like, yeah, it really should be this way. And, you know, they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. We could do it that way.
Any particular character that comes to your mind that you're most proud of? A work that, or something that really resonated with you, maybe something that touched on some kind of a personal note or something like that you can talk about? or why?
You know, I don't know that this is the role that I would pick, but there's one that always comes to mind is this short film I did called Super, and I say it partly because it is so small, and it seemed to have such a big impact for being such a small thing. But I played this homeless guy in a short film called Super about a girl with cancer, and it was, you know, it was a very modest, low budget short film. But when I read the script, I cried. Like as soon as when I just reading the script,
Mm-hmm.
I cried before before I even started on the role. And there was just something about it that really resonated with me at a deep level. That was, even though his experience, like as a homeless person, had nothing directly to do with my life experience, there was elements of it, the character, that really resonated with my soul. And I really could see just intuitively, like, this is a part of me that I really want to share, and I want to like live out and be cathartic in a sense.
So it's personal.
It's personal. And it's really interesting. I feel like I've heard from more people about that film, or at least I've heard as much about that film as anything else I've done,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of impacting people, like people really coming away with something from it and reaching out to me over the internet and being like, hey, you don't know me, but I watched this short film, and like it like, you know, I lost my daughter and blah, blah, blah. And it really spoke to me, or really moved me. And I'm really struggling right now. And this film, like, it really made my day. And it's cool how something that just seems like this is just a little thing film with nobody working on it. Nobody's quote unquote working on it. And like, look at all these people around the world that it's touched their heart. And I think, yeah, sometimes films that, you know, they on a monetary level or like an industry level, they don't factor as being relevant or even important, and they actually are important because they affect people.
That's that was always my number one kind of importance or feeling that I always took from movies, was how it affected me. How did I feel after I was watching it? And you know, some of these stories. You know, it's funny. I love science fiction, but at the same time, I love these movies that are based on like true characters and stories. And it's like, and then you kind of, when you're the actor and you become the character, but then when you're the audience and you're watching it and you kind of envisioning and replaying the story for yourself, and then it's over, you roll the credits and you snap the finger for a second, you step out of what you just watched, and you're like, wow, that really happened to somebody. That's crazy. So my next question would lead to, when you're in a character that you've spent some time developing and working on, and you come on the set, do you try to stay in character the whole time you're on set, or when you just get called on, like if I'm talking to you as a first AD, I'm like, did you watch the game last night? And be like, yeah, and then I guess we're ready. You'll like snap into the character, or do you kind of need to stay in the character the whole time, kind of walking in the trailer, getting into the character already in the makeup and trailer? Or
I have a tendency to be, I don't know if it's in character, but like focused on the character when I'm on set for the most part. But it depends on the role again. So if I'm playing George Washington, there's a lot going on that I have to keep up, and it's too hard for me to like
switch back
and forth. So it's like, I'm just training all day on being George Washington today, for the most part, right? So it's like, I'm the walking and the accent and the movement and the frame of reference is like, that's what I'm training to be in. And also, I feel like when you are switching in and out, it's easy for there to be like a missing component, you know? It's like maybe the voice is there, but like your posture's off because you know and then if you're thinking about, I got to fix my posture, well then you're already out of the scene. So for more demanding characterizations, I'm always in character, and if it's a very intense scene or role, then I'm like, you know, I'm the guy that people are like, oh, he's really method because like he's scary right now. I remember when I shot Inheritance, the first AD, he saw me, he was like, damn, he's like, you're gonna kill somebody.
Stay away from
he's
me.
like, stay away from me. I think you look like you're gonna actually kill somebody on set here. And he, in like a kind of like props way, but he was kind of jokingly like you're freaking me out a little bit how serious you are right now. But if there's a role that is like it's more like casual of a
Uh-huh,
character,
yeah.
and it's like modern day, and it's very similar to me.
You in a different setting.
It's you in a different setting, and it's just kind of more chill.
What about-
scene. Then I want to be like cutting up, because like that's the character.
Got it,
He's
yeah.
just friendly and easygoing, and
Yeah.
then I want to do that on set.
Have you played any really despicable kind of like a murderer, mass murderer, or evil troop, or anything that you had to really, or is that something that you're waiting for?
Eagerly. Yeah, I mean, I played like I played a lot of bad guys. I mean, I played a Nazi who's like executing like a kid in
Jesus.
a film. I played like
How do you
I
switch
played a
the-
horror film
How
where
do
I'm
you switch
beating
that off?
this person
How do
to
you
death.
switch when you get into the mindset of somebody like that to really deliver of what that evil human being was doing to other human, and then like switching it and talking to the little girl that was playing that role, like, you're good,
Well,
we're playing pretend.
yeah, so the film I just shot, I actually have to get angry at my little daughter in the movie, and
Mhm.
she was awesome, and we had a blast, and she was super cute, and we were getting along great the rest of the movie. But this one scene, I scared her, and she was like with her mom, like, I don't like this, and so I had to like break out of that for her sake, because I didn't want her performance to be ruined, and
Right.
just be like, hey, like, we're just acting. I'm not angry at you. But when it comes to playing evil characters, quote unquote evil characters, I don't get into the mindset of evil. And this is a topic that's kind of going a little bit too into the magic, if you will, where I can't necessarily explain it all for you. But
Mhm.
basically, I look for the motivation of the character personally that I believe in.
Mhm.
I don't look for like, oh, now I'm going to just be perverted and evil and twisted. I'm just going to look at like, what is it that I believe in this scene that justifies what I'm doing, that it makes sense to me, and then whatever the script and the context that the viewer is going to see that lens through, like they'll read into it, But I don't want to take on the soul of evil, like as an actor, because that's too much to carry.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of actors talk about that it stays with them. You take it home for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, it affects you in some way, whatever you're doing, but I don't want to get into the mindset of like, of being evil. I look at like, I played a fallen angel in this film, this pilot called Limbo, which was a blast, and it was a really cool character, and I'm like literally playing like an evil being, like a fallen being, in the context of the story. But
Mhm.
within my acting and my preparation, like I don't try to become like a demon. I just look at what is the situation on, from my point of view, and like what is important to me, and then that in combination with all the other pieces like becomes like evil in the eyes of the viewer.
What are you most excited about? What characters are you most excited? I know you love history
Mm-hmm.
and period pieces.
Yeah.
Would you say like anything?
My
period?
dream role is I want to do something for Lord of the Rings. Like, Amazon's making all of these Silmarillion inspired stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do something in that world.
So you want to work with Peter Jackson?
Well, Peter Jackson would be great. I mean, he's not directing those series.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to do that. So I want to be in Middle Earth, and I want to be a pirate. I want to do like play a privateer in a period film on a ship. That's something that's.
You want to be the pirate or like one of the
Have you seen Master and Commander?
Yes.
Yeah, so that I want to do Master and Commander too, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I want to make the script that I've written with my dad, Refuge.
Mm-hmm.
There's he wrote it originally for me, and then we collaborated together on improving it.
Can you give a short form of what the story is about?
Yeah,
without giving it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like the Wild West in the future, like post shutdown, like economic collapse.
Okay.
And it's about like
2025
or 2022. It's about a lone wolf who's like navigating this world on his own, and he comes across a town, a community that's in jeopardy, and he accidentally exposes them to this warlord, and he decides to help defend them, and in the process learns to find a home and to find community relationship when he's been running from it.
Sounds very interesting. I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
What you got going on now? Before we call it off today.
Gym Rat is the name of the game
we'll
right
talk
now.
about that.
Yeah.
You were a producer on it as well, right?
Lead actor, lead producer. Yeah.
Wearing two hats.
Wearing two hats.
How's that? Is that the first time you're producing anything and acting?
I've done short films, but I
you've done the one that you actually won awards for as a director,
actor, or
producer.
Yeah, I produced a handful of short films and acted in them. But this is the first time, doing a feature.
Okay, how did the idea came about, and what is it about roughly?
So Gym Rat is I told you I have this bigger budget film refuge that I want to make, and so this was like a more accessible stepping stone. I'm going to make a smaller budget film to start with. And I approached my friend Kors, who is a writer-director, and he's also co-producing with me. And I said, we've been waiting, for these bigger projects to happen for a long time. And why don't we make something on our own steam? And he said, sounds good. And I said, well, what do you got? And he's like, well, I have this one concept called Gym Rat, and it's about this fitness freak. He just got out of prison. He's like all about working out. I'm like, I'm all about working out. And he's like, but he thinks he's going to be the next Mr. Olympia. And he's kind of psycho.
And you're playing him.
Yeah, I'm playing him. And he was like, yeah, you just need to put on some muscle mass and grow a mustache.
So you've been growing some gains.
I put on 20 pounds for the role of lean mass. I'm actually not as big as I was for the film.
That's dedications, man.
I've got to re-up when we go back to do pickups.
Back to do pickups.
Yeah. But he had this concept, and it was like,
Can we watch this real quick?
Yeah.
A little teaser.
You got to fast forward it about a minute in to get to the teaser. Yeah, just after he finishes talking. Yeah. So, in 2019.
Can you make it large screen too, also, pre-story? Yeah.
So, in 2019, we just like make or break. We're just like, we're going to shoot this thing. And so we dove in and we started filming with what we had, So this is the first time I grew out my facial hair in my life for this role.
Click on it.
Yeah, click on it and hit the little box.
I'm Lonnie.
Hi, Lonnie.
There you go.
I am really into bodybuilding.
You have audio for this too?
It's my passion. It's my life. I've always looked at anabolics as a necessary evil of expediency. I truly believe that anyone could achieve the muscular development of a Ronnie Coleman naturally if only our lifespan were long enough and we didn't age. So, if you think about it, it's really just a question of efficiency. And if you can see what you want, you can create your reality. Bodybuilding is like anything else. You need a clear yet simple objective and a plan of action steps to execute in order to achieve it. And as long as you can visualize it clearly, you can manifest your destiny. And I am so close.
That looks really good, man.
Mr. Olympia, I can taste it. I just need to do it naturally.
Yeah.
Ooh, well, spooky.
Hey, I'm Josh Murray, lead actor and producer of Gym Rat. I hope you enjoyed our teaser, and if
There he
so,
is.
I hope you join
This
us.
is so this is our WeFunder. So
If
for
you're new
those
to
who don't know,
WeFunder,
WeFunder is an equity crowdfunding platform. So you can invest micro amounts, sort of like a Kickstarter, but you're actually buying a share of the film. So you get, based on how much you invest, a share of all the profits that the film makes, as well as the
So if you
perks.
get a distribution, you have investors.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. What is it called again?
Gym Rat,
Gym Rat,
WeFunder.
WeFunder.
Yeah.
And people can invest in your project. You guys raised some serious capital already.
Yeah. So we're about 25% of our minimum goal. And
When did you start the campaign?
we started the campaign. Well, I think we went public on WeFunder like in late January. Yeah. And so we'll be running it through the end of April. people want to jump on board.
Absolutely. And then it has like a Kickstarter. It has perks. So at
Yes.
certain levels or
You can
tiers.
get credit in the film. You could be a producer on the film. You can be on set. You could get a role in the film. There's, get a signed script, all that kind of stuff.
Josh, this was fun.
It was
Let's do it
awesome.
again. Thank you so much for coming. This was a pleasure. Nice meeting you. I've learned a lot. This is this program is all about.
Well, you're really interesting to talk to, Brian. You
Thank
did
you.
a great job of navigating all those things in my life. Like it was like a walk down memory lane.
I think the idea for the show was to give people that are in the starting line or just debating if they even want to put their foot on the start line, and show as many different processes of people that are now working professionals in the industry.
Well, you know what? This is really important, Brian, because this is how I decided if and how I was going to become an actor. Was I watched like Inside the Actor Studio, and I watched all these interviews, with actors, and I read bios, and I was like, okay, well, like, did anyone start in their 20s and like become a professional actor? Like, did anyone succeed, like starting that late, or like, how did they do it? Did they go to class? Did they just get a movie? And so, did they go to school? Did they not go to school? So, watching all of those interviews and like seeing different people's paths was really helped me to go, okay, how do I do it? And also, I can know that I can do it from where I'm at right now.
Yep, absolutely. And I think another thing I wanted to focus on was just also the other side, the behind the camera people. That's why the below the line, above the line. Like, hey, how do I become a DP? How do I become a production designer? What are the routes and the avenues that one can take? And acting and directing and producing all those, and financing. Like, how do I get money for my project? And this is a perfect example, of the creativity that if you just put in some time, and people can hear now about WeFunder. They're like, oh, maybe I can put my project on it and I can shoot for $5,000 and spread it out on the social media, and maybe have, friends of friends and family, and, somehow we can maybe crowdfund $5,000 into making this short film or something. So, well, thanks for everything that you shared with us today. We'll come back and do it again when you get that dream role.
That dream role.
Yeah, I want to hear all about that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Josh, thank you very much. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.